amigos de YouTube, yo soy Cristian con aquí presentándome con un nuevo video. Pues hoy estamos aquí en Chicago Midway, el primer día, entonces pues ahorita vamos a hacer un recorrido en toda la ciudad y pues ahorita estamos aquí en un barquito, es que vamos a recorrer todo por este mar. Estoy dando unas indicaciones pero no lo entiendo. A ver.
If there is an emergency of any sort, the deckhands will issue life jackets to each and every person on board, show you how to put them on, and they will tell you what you need to do. It is very important to listen to the instructions of the crew, should they have any. They are here to keep you safe. The captain and I trust them, you should too. Along the lines of being safe, there's absolutely, positively no standing on the benches or chairs at any time. Please do not lean over the handrails or even try sitting up on the handrail. We do not want you to fall or fall into the water. It's an exercise in common sense. It's a good place to warm up. Restrooms are located on the side of the vessel. That's the side against the wall currently. So that being said, it looks like we're taking off. So welcome you guys. Glad you're here. History, folklore, other stories about Chicago. So hopefully
ya están cerrando todas las compuertas y todo, pues ahorita no quiero hablar tan fuerte porque ni modo de estar gritando ahí.
Chicago came to be, the abridged version. So back in up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Marquette being a priest, he was trying to bring Christianity to the Native Americans up there.
Por cierto, se me olvidó mencionarles, estamos aquí en el río Michigan. O sea, está padrísimo, aquí está hermosa. Ya está avanzando.
So they're quite excited to come and explore. They came across Lake Michigan, got to about Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's where the Fox River begins. Fox River leads into the Wisconsin River, which in turn leads into the Mississippi, and they were happily on their way until they got about 400 miles north towards the end of the trip. At any rate, after Fort Dearborn was completed, people had confidence being garrisoned by the troops, and they started moving in. We became a town, and however you want to do it, though, that's fine by me. But I'm going to try to remember to point out the Hancock again, so we'll see it on the way back in case you missed it that first time around. It's a little bit elusive these days with all the construction that happened in the last few years along the river. So we'll get back to the Hancock in a little bit. Anytime after this bridge on the right, you're going to see a blue glass triangle. It says Swiss Hotel at the top. Oddly enough, that's the Swiss Hotel. And this is a Harry Weiss design. Harry Weiss absolutely loved to go sailing. And so the triangle shape is a reference to water. So that building references water. So does the one that's kind of peeking out from behind it. We're going to see it better when we turn around over by the lock, but you can see in between that blue building and that brown building, there's that building with the really cool white undulating curvy balconies. That's a fairly new Aqua. 2009, designed by Jeannie Gang. The Aqua is 81 stories tall, has the largest outdoor pool in Sun Deck in Chicago. Each of those white curvy balconies is put on there with the help of GPS because they're all uniquely shaped from one another. We want to make sure they got the desired visual effect they're going for. For me, it's kind of like a cascading waterfall. But like I said, we're going to see the Aqua when we turn around, so we'll get back to that in a little bit. For the better part of this trip, we are going to be looking at Wacker Drive, which is the monstrous roadway off to the right. Super complicated. Wacker Drive traverses the city. It goes north, south, east, and west, has an upper, a lower, and in some spots, a lower level. You wouldn't think something that complicated related to driving could have been conceived of or thought of very long ago, but Chicago is full of wonderful surprises. And Wacker Drive was part of a massive city plan published on July 4th, 1909, and it provides some visual interest along the river, the fountains and statues that we placed throughout the city. So as I was saying, a lot of that 1909 plan focused on abstract ways to make Chicago more beautiful. But fun things came out of that plan, like Navy Pier and the Parks District of Chicago. Pretty much anything you can think of that makes Chicago beautiful, fun, functional, or all three, probably had its beginnings in that 1909 plan. Which is, eventually we beat out St. Louis, New York, and Washington, D.C. for the honor. Everybody went to work immediately. They put Daniel Burnham in charge of the architecture. Burnham oversaw the construction and completion of 200 buildings in 3 years. That's impressive today. So because Daniel Burnham helped make that World's Fair one of the most wildly successful of all time, therefore putting Chicago back on the map as far as world metropolises are concerned, people naturally looked to Daniel Burnham to further plan Chicago after that fair was over. This is some good timing. Early 1900s is when city planning started to take off as an idea here in the United States. We call it the city beautiful movement. Sociologists got together and said, hey fellas, I bet if we were to put beautiful things inside of all of our cities, people might act more beautifully and be nicer to each other. Daniel Burnham was a good candidate for that. He felt Chicago could be a Paris on the prairie. If you've ever been to Paris and walked along the Seine, you'll notice similarities between the bridges, the Riverwalk, and ours.
Un helicóptero, un helicóptero.
Burnham also said that the Lake Michigan, by all rights belongs to the people. Of the 28 miles of lakefront that we have, over 15 of that is dedicated to public use. Because of Daniel Burnham, we have over 552 public parks in Chicago. I could spend hours with Daniel Burnham.
Pues está un solecito, pero aún estoy enfriando.
Surprise. So as we turn here, we're going to get a good look at this curvaceous glass and steel structure. It's going to be in front of us. It'll end up on the right-hand side as we turn here. That curvaceous glass and steel structure is called Lake Point Tower. It's built in 1968 by a couple of Mies van der Rohe students, and we're going to talk about Mies van der Rohe later on, too. A couple of students, Shipwright and Heinrich. Lake Point Tower is the only private, i.e. residential building that is east of Lakeshore Drive. Montgomery Ward felt the same way that Daniel Burnham did about our beautiful lakefront. So he fought for over 20 years to make sure our lakefront would remain forever clear and free so everybody could enjoy it. Law was put on the books stating no private building shall be built on land east of Lakeshore Drive. Well, there's a little thing we do here in Chicago. It's called air rights construction. And when we get over by the Amtrak and the Metro tracks, I'm going to explain that at length then. It'll make a lot more sense. But suffice it to say that when you rights of the air above it. So they found that loophole in the law. They snuck that building in. It's always going to be the only private building that's east of Lakeshore Drive. Making that 70-story structure pretty prestigious to live in. Lots of famous people have throughout the years, like rock star Alice Cooper, baseball slugger Sammy Sosa, Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, the actors. They've all called it home at one point in time or another. Circle at the top. People ask about it every day, usually the same two questions. So number one, yes, you guys are all up into the inner steel framework inside of those walls, so he's hidden away from everybody, tapped into the city's electrical supply that runs to the bridge houses. So underneath that bridge, he had himself a television, a microwave, and a Sony PlayStation. All the comforts of home. What happened was one of his friends was a horrible person and tried to rob a convenience store. Rather than get thrown in jail for armed robbery, he told on Richard Dorsey, and now there's no more people underneath that bridge. So pretty much the end of that story, if you not have a segue for that one. So the next two buildings I want to show you today are going to be up ahead of us and to the left. Up ahead to the left, we already saw the Aqua. It's just a different angle. Remember the building with the white, curvy, undulating balconies? To get a good view of the Aqua again from this angle. And ladies, the Aqua was designed by female architect Jeannie Gang, and that makes the Aqua at 819 feet tall, the third tallest building in the world to have been designed by a woman. Pretty cool stuff. To the left and behind the Aqua is a tall white building with dark vertical stripes all the way up and down. That's the 83-story Aon Center built in 1973 by Edward Durrell Stone. Aon is Chicago's third tallest building at 1,136 feet. Originally, Aon was the world's tallest marble-clad building.
Perdonen, es que
that title because
me estaba poniendo mi guante.
they discovered after its completion that the beautiful white Carrara marble they originally faced that building with, it was buckling and cracking because of Chicago's harsh winters. So they wrapped the building up so nothing would fall off and conk somebody in the head on the sidewalk, took all 43,000 panels of marble off, and then replaced it with granite from North Carolina. That whole process cost them $80 million. She said,
Perdonen
no,
por eso, pero
the marble. $80 million mistake, and a big old whoops on that one. So here on the right on the riverbank, we have the bare bones of what is normally a very gorgeous fountain. Sorry guys, in the fall they shut off the water in all the fountains to make sure everything's completely drained out before it starts freezing. Because if there's any water left in those pipes when it does freeze, it'll expand and wreck everything from inside, which is not good. So that's why the water's off. That's called Centennial Fountain, because it was built in 1989 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Chicago Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. That's a lot of fancy words put together to mean the people that reverse the flow of the Chicago. We had no sewers. We thought of this river as nothing more than a garbage dump. Human waste, industrial waste, animal carcasses, anything we didn't want, we dumped it in. And it carried out into Lake Michigan. Huge problem. Lake Michigan was, and still is, our source of drinking water. Thousands of people were dying from typhoid and cholera. So a group of guys got together and decided that the best way to fix that would be to divert the flow of the river away from the lake. They dug a 28-mile-long canal on the South Branch called the Chicago Sanitary and Shipping Canal. By excavating all of that dirt, they lowered the riverbed. Water won't not really. So immediately after this bridge on the right, you see a building that looks older than it actually is. That's the NBC Tower Chicago, built in 1989, designed by Adrian Smith of Skidmore, Owens & Merrill. It is meant to look like Rockefeller Center in New York City, NBC's headquarters there. So it's very much in the style of a 1920s Art Deco skyscraper.
Estamos en la parte de enfrente, aquí donde estoy comiendo. Pues, esperen. Está hermoso, hermoso. A la madre, está padrísimo. Bueno, pues ahorita ya casi llegamos. Pues ya no, ya falta un poquito. Entonces pues voy a hacer un pequeño corte porque esta parte ya lo vieron. Por eso voy a hacer un pequeño corte y nos vemos ahorita. Natalia, no hemos llegado. Vamos a dar un recorrido por allá. Bueno, nos vemos en esa parte, en el otro puente. There are 6 different shades of white terracotta tiles on the face of the brick, making it lighter and brighter as they go up to dry your eyes up to the top of the clock tower, 398 feet. There's 250,000 individual terracotta tiles in the building. That's going to bring us to one of the newest and biggest installations in the Chicago skyline, the giant blue building, International Hotel Tower. This is 2009. ¿En serio se te mete el aire casi por el ano? No manches, es que hace un chorro de frío, pero miren, pero está hermosa la ciudad. Aquí hay chavos tomándose selfies. As I was saying, next door to Trump is the former IBM building. I keep using the word. Ahí podemos ver de esos botes que, bueno, de esos barcos que tienen así la basura o de construcción, pero miren. El sol me está quedando. Las Torres Gemelas. No se crean, eso ya se derrumbaron, ya se derribaron hace mucho. No sé si se oiga la musiquita que les puse para que no se aburrieran, pero miren. O sea, pues está padrísimo este lugar. No sé si lo hayan visitado, pero está muy frío, pero a la vez está hermoso. Ahorita, más al ratito, voy a subir otro video ya recorriendo todo esto, pero ya no en barco, sino caminando, pero está padrísimo. Así que chicos, espero que les haya gustado este nuevo video. Denle like, suscríbanse, no saben cuánto me ayudan y nos vemos hasta la próxima. Adiós.